So today we're going to be talking about how to find new music. So I've been interested in music pretty deeply for the past probably 3 years or so, and throughout that time I've developed a few methods that have really helped me find music that I love based off of what I've been gravitating towards, lanes of music that I've been interested in getting into. And so we're going to be talking about 3 of those methods here today. The first one I call the tree of influences. The second one I call crate digging. And the third one is just about how to communicate with others related to music. Real quick, subscribe if you haven't already. I've got some more stuff coming out very soon. Make sure to check out my short film Shadowboxing and my Joe Lewis versus Max Schmeling video that came out recently. That'll be on my channel or in the link down below. So method number 1, which I call the tree of influences. Now, this method is one that some people find kind of daunting, but I've personally been most successful with this method, and this is the one that I always recommend to people when they're first trying to get into lanes of music that they haven't necessarily delved into quite yet. So the way that the tree of influences works is you take an artist, and the things that you're going to be looking for is A, the main artist that influenced the sound or genre or that artist particularly. And then you're also going to look at artists that have been influenced by that sound, whether that's modern equivalents of older artists or young people who are trying to imitate some of the big sounds of current days. Those are going to be the main categories that you're looking at. So essentially what you're doing there is you're building something of a family tree of all of these influence artists. So you might find an artist, find someone that influenced them, end up falling in love with their music, and then falling in love with more people who were influenced by their music or by one of their influences. And you can kind of continue that process repeatedly, and through that you can just develop a really great music vocabulary and also just find some really great stuff that has some of the sounds that you're looking for. I think that this works really well with some artists who take inspiration from a lot of different genres, because there are specific things that people gravitate towards in their music that they might not know are pulled from funk music or jazz or a specific subset of hip hop they don't understand, or even like some classical stuff. So I think that that's a really great way to go about it. Just a general example that's really easy to give, look at like a Tyler the Creator. That's an artist that takes inspiration from a lot of really big music scenes that people aren't necessarily tapped into. He takes inspiration from certain generations of R&B and soul, but also certain facets of hip hop that some people aren't necessarily tapped into, and his sound has been super influential. So for someone like him, if you're really interested in kind of the poppier sounds that he has, you could listen to a Pharrell Williams record, whether that's his hip hop record or some of his poppier stuff. That's where he's, with the NERD stuff, Neptune stuff, kind of pulled a lot from there for some of his popular cuts. If you're more interested in some of his more R&B soul-centric stuff, listen to Talking Book by Stevie, listen to, Aretha, those classic soul records, and that's really where you're going to get the foundation that stuff is based on. If you're interested in his hip-hop roots, he takes even a lot of inspiration, his early stuff particularly from like an Eminem, Marshall Mathers LP, or you can take a look at some of the more alternative paths that have kind of grown out of that early Odd Future stuff. You can also look at contemporary. So look at Tyler, some of his contemporaries, that R&B lane. You might be looking at a Steve Lacy, Frank Ocean, Daniel Caesar. But then on the hip hop side, you've got those Odd Future guys. You've got Earl Sweatshirt, Vince Staples, all these different guys. Look at Earl. There's a whole other scene that's been built just based off of the sound that he created. Look at Mike, Mavi, Red Veil, Maxo. For those of you that aren't really familiar with those artists or those lanes, it might seem like I'm kind of just throwing names around, but that's just showing how much you can pull just from one artist that you really love. And, there's probably Tyler the Creator fans here. Have you listened to a Stevie Wonder record or a Pharrell record or a Mike record? There's Tylerisms that can be found in all those different things. And you can pull that from, do the same process on artists from all different points in time. You could just take Stevie Wonder and say, what were the sounds that came before him that influenced him? When you have a guy like that is so influential and foundational to so many different sounds, there's like an infinite amount of contemporaries and people who have taken inspiration from him. You can just spend forever just going off of that. So I think that that is a super helpful and easy way to figure things out. Now, how do you figure out who people were influenced by and who is influenced by them? I think that there's a few main ways to do this. One of them is just, I guess, what you would call researching it directly. So you're watching interviews, even stuff coming up on your TikTok feed, like this person's talking about this album that they love or this thing that they're interested in, or they worked with this person early in their career. That's another thing. Is there a song that you really love that has a feature, that has a verse or a passage that you really love? Have you listened to one of their albums? How do you know that that isn't going to be the texture that really drew you to this genre in the first place? So there's all of these different ways to branch out. The other main method that you could go with if you're trying to figure out who people are influenced by is when you have a good understanding of these classic records and these foundational sounds that a lot of things are based off of in plenty of different genres, you get a little bit of a better sense of picking up on where things originated from, first of all, obviously, but you start to understand, okay, here's a record that did something that nothing else did before. Here's a good example. Like, let's look at a singer who does elaborate singing passages, elaborate runs that you really like. Where do those runs come from? Who was the first person to implement that? And also in this particular setting, a lot of times things that are groundbreaking in music are things that are taken from existing places and placed into new ones. When Kanye first started using soul samples, it completely changed the game and everyone started to structure their beats around these elaborate vocal samples. No one was doing that before. So when you start to understand the foundation of these things, you can pull them back to their origins and you can say, okay, this element of music started from this place, and because I know where that place is, I can look at more things around this area to better understand what is it about this music that I like. That's kind of the core question that is going to be the key to a lot of people really finding out what they like. It's figuring out, when I listen to a song, what is it that I'm hearing in it that makes me love it, or that makes me want to dance, or that makes me want to cry? That is kind of the basic question. And by doing this process of the tree of influences, you're going to get a really great understanding of that, just because you're going to understand, okay, I just listened to this song, it came out yesterday, and it made me cry. What was it about this song that gave me this emotional reaction? And who were the people who figured out how to do these things? Who are the other people who are doing things this way in order to create this result? And I know that a lot of this sounds super philosophical and broad, but when you really think about it in this sense, you can really just get a deeper relationship with the art that you're consuming. Our particular project that I did for quite a while was I listened to a new album every day. Over here, I've got one of these little booklets. I wrote every single day about what I liked, what I didn't like, and what about it made me like or not like certain songs, certain aspects about the records. That project's not for everyone. It's a time commitment, and I had to stop doing it because for me, it started to feel like work. It started to feel like, I am waking up every day and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to listen to another record. I got to write about it. What if I don't want to listen to an experimental jazz record today? What if I just want to listen to the stuff that I love in this particular playlist, or, XYZ? It kind of makes it, every time I turned on music, it would be like, oh no, now, I got to do this at some point in my day, so I might as well do this on my drive to school when I would want to be listening to this. So fair warning, if you are going to do something like this, do your best to make it not feel like work, and don't force yourself into anything that you don't actively want to be doing, because you don't want to develop an aversive relationship with the stuff that you're consuming. But that being said, I think that it was really helpful for me to develop a stronger understanding of music in general, from just instruments, not only identifying them, but why does this instrument being played in this way or used in this way, how is it unique? How does it elicit this emotional reaction? How does one person succeed at a certain goal that another person doesn't? What makes that difference? And so when you really break these things down, as daunting as that task may seem, it's really going to open up the door for you in order to just really know what you're looking for. And then that kind of segues into the next part, which I call crate digging. I will say the advantages of this over both the concept of the family of influences, or tree of influences rather, and then also the idea of documenting what you like about music. This is a little bit less of a time commitment, unless you want it to be, and it's no barrier to entry. This is kind of what the name sounds like. For those who are familiar, crate digging in the vinyl record sense refers to when producers go to a record store, kind of, just a shop or a warehouse, and they literally dig through crates to find rare records. I'm going to sample this, or just listen to it, That's what that process generally refers to. But I use it to refer to when you are just listening to stuff just to try and find, kind of a diamond in the rough. For the average listener, that's a process that a lot of people don't really want to embark on, because it's really easy, just in the era of streaming and really easy, quick consumption, to want to just, when I sit down and I want to listen to music, why would I want to listen to 10 songs that I don't like in order to get to one song that I like, when I can listen to 15 songs that I know I like, which are in the playlist that I ordered in this certain way? When you are kind of guaranteed something from this other piece of art, it makes it less attractive to go about it in a way where you're looking for the rare gems. Now, how do we kind of reorganize that process in order to remove that negative association that we have with it? Well, if we are digging crates and looking for new music that we've never listened to, there's a lot of different ways to do that. I mean, in the streaming sense, of course, you have curated playlists. I mean, look at Spotify. They'll make playlists for you. There'll be playlists that are curated for particular things. And I'm not going to discount that as a resource. I think that those things are and can be very helpful for people when you have an understanding of, I like this genre, or I like this subset of artists from this place, and I think that this could be a great way of me discovering new things. That is a perfectly fine way of going about that. There's also, what I've found more success with is with artist curated playlists, with kind of individual companies and groups who make playlists to expose people to different music genres. One of my favorite things to do is to find the personal, or they might not necessarily be personal, but the Spotify pages for artists that I really love and listening to their playlists. Because it's not just, did this artist influence, or is this artist influenced by? It's, what do the people who make the stuff that I like, what do they like? And I've found a lot of success in that. Good example of that, let me pull up this song. Encyclopedia by Operelly. This song is by an artist who has 3 songs and has 30,000 monthly listeners. There's no way that I would have found this song, but I found it in a playlist which is on the personal Spotify account of the artist Baird, who's one of my favorite artists. Found this song. It's not necessarily even in the genre of music that Baird makes, but I love it. Like, I've been listening to it all the time. Great song. Go listen to it. That's something I found super helpful. I mean, at the same time, in that process, there are still going to be stuff where you're like, okay, I'm not really into this, It's kind of more of a passive process. here's the way that I have adjusted that to make it easier for me to deal with. So, me personally, I'm a very conscious consumer. I don't know if that's coming up on the mic. There's like a coyote outside. That's crazy. But I'm a very conscious consumer of art and music particularly. I'm not one who's going to play music that I know when I'm doing homework or working on a project or, all these different things. I listen to music in the car when I'm not doing anything else. When I'm just listening to music, there's, and then of course at live events and all those other things. Music pulls me in such a way that I can't listen to something that I already know passively without it becoming the center of my attention. And the key word there is that I know. When I'm listening to music that I don't know yet, it doesn't have that same effect. And I think a lot of people can attest to that, if you're listening to a song or there's a song playing in the background, it's not going to draw you in unless it has a quality to it that you really are attracted to, or if it has a moment in it that's like, wow. And because of that, we can use that to our advantage. So I implore you guys, when you're sitting down to work on a project or do homework or have it kind of as the secondary thing or, trying to fall asleep. I don't understand. I've never necessarily understood people who listen to music that they know when they fall asleep. I feel like I would just be wanting to listen to it. But, to each their own. In those instances, listen to stuff that you don't necessarily know that has a connection to something else. So, we've talked about influences, contemporaries, artists who have some sort of similarity to a different artist from the same city. Then the crate digging, listen to a curated playlist, listen to an artist playlist, listen to an album that just kind of looks cool. And it will let you focus on whatever you need to be doing primarily, but at the same time, passively, occasionally, those little things will just poke out at you and you'll know, oh shoot, I found a good one here. Save it for later. That's exactly what happened with me with this song. I was probably doing homework or something. I don't remember specifically, but it's kind of stuck with me. It was like the vocals were hitting my ears the right way. And I was like, wow, okay, this is, I found one. And then saved it. It's been on repeat. So that's a super helpful process. And I think that music needs to be somewhere in your everyday life if you want to be discovering new things. There's kind of different people, different perspectives when it comes to consuming music. There's people like me who consume it, often, but more actively. The people who consume it constantly, which is, I just want to clarify. I think that's totally valid, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's people who are listening to everything constantly, and those are oftentimes the people who have the most issue with feeling like they're running out of things to listen to, because when the things are playing all the time and feel like you're stuck in a specific area of music, feels like life's playing on repeat. And so, those are going to be a lot of the people that I'm talking to here. And then the third subset is going to be people who just don't really make time for music. And how to get into music is kind of a question on its own, and one that might need its own video to tackle. But I will say that most of these things that I've spoken about so far will also apply to that situation. If you're someone that doesn't feel like you have a good understanding of music or even an interest in it, even though you know that there's got to be something somewhere that's for you, these are ways that you can go about it. I'm sure you know an artist that you like, even if you feel like you don't. Stuff that you listened to when you were a kid, or you heard when you were a kid, or when it went on the radio, you were bobbing your head, or stuff that you hear at parties, and you think this one's not quite as bad as the rest. Those are kind of the ways that you can expand. And then for those of us who are, not too remiss to go out and really make an effort to find all these different new lanes and pathways, something like literally going to a record store, picking up a record just because you think the cover's cool or you heard of the name and oh, this, I know of it because of this, or I heard this person talking about it. You buy that record, you listen to it and you love it. I mean, my first experience listening to Sly and the Family Stone was when I bought I believe it was the sophomore record, Stand by Sly and the Family Stone. Bought this at a record store because I saw a Hive Mind video, and Graydon was always talking about how much he loves Sly and the Family Stone, knew the name, decided, okay, I'm going to buy this record, ended up enjoying it. Then went on Spotify, was like, okay, what are some other Sly and the Family Stone songs I can listen to? Listen to There's a Riot Going On, and that's like one of my favorite records. I love that album. At the end of the day, this should really be an enjoyable process, Listening to music should be an enjoyable thing. So do what's enjoyable to you. But if you can go out and really commit to listening to something that you've never listened to before or that you know nothing about, you'll find gold eventually. And just that additional emotional connection that you have from having that relationship to that piece of art is just going to elevate it so much. Art becomes better when you have a story connected to it. And that is a great way to do that. As you develop kind of a more refined musical taste based off of what you naturally gravitate towards, it's just a good feeling to be able to say, oh, I found this person because of this. I discovered this thing through this other pathway. That's just it's a great way to have conversation. It's a great way to look back on certain things. And art just gets stronger the more that's attached to it. And so when you have these emotional associations or you have these different stories to tell, when you're having those conversations with others about, hey, check this album out, check out this song, you can say, this is how I got here. And you can say, this is where you need to go if you really love this and you want to find other things in that area. And that transitions pretty perfectly into the next and I guess final part that I wanted to talk about, which was how to communicate with people about music and how to get involved in musical conversations. So there's a lot of different ways to go about this, and it's kind of a changing landscape. First, we'll talk about the internet. The internet is a great place to discover music. Regardless of how the internet has affected the industry and has affected the artistry, that's, again, a conversation for another time. One thing that it has improved, and a positive result of how available the information is that if you want to find something, it's really easy to find it. And these communities are everywhere. So communities to get involved with and how to do that. I mean, a lot of people, just based on the way that the algorithms function, they'll naturally tailor them to the kind of stuff that you're interested in. And sometimes things will fall into your lap that way. Another thing that I would like to note with the internet, and particularly with that method of finding things, just when stuff naturally comes to you, one thing that you don't want to let negatively affect you is, I guess, the stigma related to internet music. I think a lot of times, for whatever, I can't really pin down, at least yet, what makes a song blow up in these different ways. I don't know why. Like, there's certain songs, it's like, okay, this new pop song came out. It's tailored to do well on TikTok and to be danced to in this certain way. Obviously, this is going to blow up. But then there's also, like, a Steely Dan song will like randomly pop off, or like a clip from something really specific. Like it's kind of, there's a randomness to it. But I will say that it's important that you don't let the stigma that this is a TikTok song or a whatever song kind of get to you. Listen to what you like. If there's something that you naturally gravitate towards, just popularity doesn't matter. You might be someone that just really loves pop music. Maybe just someone who just loves a lot of music, and a lot of the stuff that you come across, the majority of it, you're just like, wow, give me more of this. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's really easy when you become more educated in and interested in music. It's easy to develop a little bit of an individuality complex. Like, I'm fighting with all the other music heads, and I need to be the most unique. I need to have the most, refined taste or perspective. And I think that is just kind of a negative thought process for most people. I think that isn't really going to bring you anywhere that's going to do you any good. And so I think that that's something that's important to avoid in that particular way of looking about things. But the internet has a lot of more specific things that you might have to seek out, or that you might have to do a little more homework to figure out. Look at and look into different communities related to the genres and artists that you like. And I'm talking about like fan clubs and Discord servers necessarily. If that's something that helps you, go for it. I'm more referring to, you could even sometimes, there's groups of artists that all make music related to a particular artist's sound. Or there's particular internet communities who are just really interested in a particular artist. It is those kind of fan club things. And you can look at those places and say, what are these people listening to? What else are they big fans of? And find things that way. And then separate entirely from just all that internet stuff, there's talking to people. And this can be tough. And it's really easy. I know that this is a trap that I fell into, to feel that you were just like on an island and there's no one else around that gets it like you do, or that, has the same relationship with it that you do, or wants to have the conversations that you enjoy having. And that just probably isn't true. There probably is someone out there that is gravitating towards the same things as you, even if they don't know it. And so how are we going to get ourselves to be able to have these conversations about music and meet like-minded people? There's a few different ways to do that. First, the more that you display what you like, the more people that like the same things you're going to run into. And that's something that I've learned, for a long time. All of my artistic passions were kind of something that I displayed to an extent, but they were very personal to me, and that that's a good relationship to have. But at the same time, if no one knows, how is anyone supposed to find you? You can't expect to find your quote unquote soulmates in art if you're not exposing these aspects of yourself to others. And so that's number one. And then also, you can make your group. You might just have a friend that is just down for anything, or also interested vaguely in trying to understand these things that you are interested in. Expose them to these things, and they might become that for you. They might become that outlet that you've been needing. And then in addition to that, you might not be utilizing the ways that you can communicate with other people with similar interests to the best of your ability. I mean, one of those is just like, look at local groups and communities and clubs and whatnot. That's a thing that a lot of people probably just find a little too daunting. But, go to a concert and have a conversation. Say, hey, nice shoes, nice shirt, What do you listen to? What about this artist do you really like? How long have you been listening to them? What other concerts have you been to recently? It's so easy It really is so easy, and there's nothing on the line. I think that a lot of people have this baseline sense that every social interaction that they have, they're like holding up their like social light bulb made of glass, and as soon as they make a slip up, that person's smashing it and your whole world falls apart. And the reality is, especially in those types of scenarios, that is not how it works. No one knows who you are. There's no risk involved. You can intentionally just be the most awkward, weird, uncomfortable version of yourself, and all that's going to be is a story for that person that they're going to say, hey, I met this weird person at the concert. Like, there's no risk. There's nothing wrong. Like, go talk to people. You are cool. You're a nice person to talk to. Go get out. Listen to what people have to say and then talk, you know. Look at who's opening for them on their tour. What other places are they going? You know, take an hour drive to go to a venue that you wouldn't normally go to. You know, stuff like that. There's just a lot of really great people to be met and places to be found through that process. If you're someone that feels like, you know, where I live, there's no scene, or no one likes the stuff that I do over here, or, you know, any of those similar kind of thought processes, they exist. They're somewhere. There's something everywhere. And if you haven't taken the active path to say, I'm going to seek out these music scenes, I'm going to figure out the best way of going about learning about this or experiencing it live, I mean, then you can't really definitively say that it doesn't exist, right? Have you really truly looked, and have you tried? If you found it, have you tried? That's a really important question. I mean, and I'm not saying like, if you want to get in the music scene, you got to go to 20 concerts. Like, you know, concerts are expensive. That's not, you know, something that a lot of people have time for or money for. But they're just a great resource, and live music is just something that, if you have the means, is just something that you should be making time for. There's just a sense of community and, you know, camaraderie that goes along with being people listening and experiencing the same things. And there's different ways to do that. You know, most people go to concerts, whether big or small, with a group or a partner or a, you know, X, Y, and Z. And that's awesome because you've got someone to fall back on. I mean, if you also, you know, for people who don't feel safe going somewhere by themselves, obviously that's very important. But if you are someone who maybe it's a place you've been before, or you feel safe and that you can, you know where to go and you know how to, you know, protect yourself, or, you know, whatever that may be, I would actually recommend, you know, go to a few shows by yourself. I've done that many times, and I've had some really cool experiences. I've met some really cool people just by that process. It kind of forces you to have those interactions when you go to a show, and you know, you don't have that kind of backboard to fall back on. It's not like every single time, you know, we're waiting for the next opener to come on, you got to start talking to your friend again. You know, you have to find a way to fill that time, and so it forces you to have those conversations. You talk to someone, you meet their friends. Where are they from? Why are they here? And you know, that can just be a really helpful and kind of a unique experience, because also, you know, just in the less flowery sense, especially if you're the one that's like the music person, like generally, and the other person's like coming along or whatever, when you're in the pit or you're, you know, doing whatever you're doing at the show, and half your mental process is always, where are they? Where did I lose them? Oh shoot, they're on the other side of the venue. You know, that's not like that's kind of distracting you a little bit from just kind of being symbiotic with the music and with the crowd. I think it's something that everyone should do at least once, and just a great way to continue to kind of expand what we've been talking about. I hope something that I laid out here today was helpful to you guys. I hope that it kind of helped you get out of one of those musical ruts. But the number one tip that I have for anyone who wants to find more music to listen to is to listen to albums. If you're not listening to full-length albums, you're doing something wrong, in my opinion. A lot of people just really stick to playlists. It's so easy. It's so simple to fall back on. But if you want to find more songs to listen to, you got to listen to all the songs that the artist made in the periods and years that they were making the stuff that you like. So you got to listen to albums. That is really just like the one barrier that a lot of people have. They're not listening to full albums. It's too hard. You have to think about it. You got to, pay attention, but just find one album, even if it's one that you already have listened to and you know that you like. One album, just on a day where you don't have too much to do, sit down, listen to the whole thing, front to back, doing nothing else but listening to the album. And, in whatever environment helps you do that the best, whether that's, sitting outside or closing your eyes or, all these different things. That's something that I really implore people to try out, because it'll help you realize that you already know more about music than you think you do. And that is the biggest wall, the biggest hurdle that you're going to have to get through before you can really understand music in the way that you probably want to. So thank you guys so much for watching today. I'll be doing more in this style here in the future. More short films coming out soon. But appreciate all the support on the return to the channel. Thanks so much, and I'll see you guys soon.